So I just uploaded a short called It's All of Use. And I think I'm inspired to do another longer, sort of off the cuff video. Junebug has found a patch of snow at one of our favorite lakes near my home. And she is digging it. She is looking forward to winter without a doubt. So it's all of use. What do I mean by that? I think for those of us who are writers, artists, dancers, filmmakers, sculptors, any sort of artist, we have to use what life gives us. We have inspiration that's not necessarily just life, but we have our imaginations and fantastical worlds and fantastical visions. But just like Junie, finding this patch of snow and just making the best of it. I think we artists are tasked with doing much the same thing. We go through life day to day, different things appear, different things happen, different people come into our lives and leave our lives. And all of it is useful for our art. I don't mean that in an exploitative way. I don't mean, I guess for memoirists, they're literally writing about the things that have happened to them, the people they've known, the places they've been, their life events, what's made them who they are. But I don't necessarily think that's required or really suitable for different types of writing. And here I'm going to branch off and just talk about writers and not try to cover all the possible aspects of creativity. But I think it does apply to all different types of artists. But let me just sort of focus on whatever she's looking at here. She sees something, a squirrel probably. And just talk about, for writers, say we're fiction writers or poets, creative nonfiction. Most writers I know are going to use their own life experiences to some extent. Ooh, and now she's pulling me off the path. There's a well-known adage that beginning writers who are writing their first book, let's say their first novel, that it's very common for that work to be extremely autobiographical, even if they are writing quote-unquote fiction. It's very common for those first books, mine included, back in the day, the first novel I ever wrote, which shall remain unpublished forever and in a drawer somewhere. Don't even know where it is anymore. I was convinced I was a literary fiction writer at the time, and I was getting there. I was learning how to do that. But that book, that manuscript was extremely autobiographical. I think mainly because I was young and a fairly inexperienced long-form writer. I had written many short stories. And honestly, at the time I thought I had quite a bit of life experience. But looking back now, I realized I didn't have that much life experience to have the kind of perspective that is really, really helpful when writing a novel or some sort of long work, a poetry chapbook, etc., collection of short stories. So I didn't really have that perspective, and that wasn't a bad thing. That's not a through no fault of mine sort of thing. But it was what it was. And so now I do have a lot more of that perspective. I hope to keep getting more and more throughout my life. But what I realize, I think most of all, especially personally, I'm in a time of a lot of transition right now in my life. Some of it really beautiful and awesome. Some of it pretty painful. I have a relative who has recently struggled with some pretty severe health issues, and it's been very concerning and scary, and it's brought up a lot of things. But then every day I also get to look around and see total beauty. Our weather for November, late November now, here on the mountain is just extraordinary. I live in such a beautiful place. There's been a big hawk visiting my property in the past few days. Just saw it hanging out in the back the other day, just looking in at me through the window, and I thought, wow, that is gorgeous. Tried to capture it, didn't get very good footage. But my point is, it's always a mix. There's always something to use. Now again, this doesn't mean that I personally am going to write specifically about this time in life. But the things that are happening, the people I'm meeting, the experiences I'm having, the emotions that are coming up, some of them feeling very almost ancient, almost primal, especially when someone you love is suffering. And the emotions that come up around beauty, beautiful things, and beautiful scenery, and beautiful experiences, wonderful dreams. I've been sleeping like a log and having these really awesome dreams. That's there too. So it's all intermingled. And so while I might not write about these things 100% as is, they're likely going to be metamorphosized. What's the other word that I love? It's eluding me at the moment. I can never remember this word. I'll think about it, of course, once I stop recording this. But they're likely to be changed, transmuted into something else, into a different kind of story. I have an idea I'm kicking around right now about a character, and I can instantly think how my own experiences can apply to this character. But it's not an autobiographical concept. But still, using our own experiences really keeps the writing grounded in reality, right? I think even if we're writing sci-fi, fantasy, any kind of speculative fiction, it still needs to be grounded in some sort of human emotion, some sort of human experience, human psychology in such a way that readers can relate to it, even if it's a fantastical world or a completely made-up world. We still want readers to be able to have that experience of, I understand that emotion this robot is feeling or struggling to feel. I understand the fear that this princess in the woods is feeling as she's undercover and battling this evil, whatever it might be. And of course, realistic fiction, contemporary fiction, anything that's not sort of on the outskirts of reality it's I think much easier to do that in a way. Although you don't have the shield and the cover when writing contemporary fiction, realistic fiction, women's fiction, you don't have the cover of, well, it's a fantasy world or it's a futuristic world, for example. If it's literary fiction, it probably needs to really be a very, very good depiction of reality. And of course, there can be blends of other things in there, magical realism, etc. But I'm talking about, straight commercial fiction, straight literary fiction. Writing those is in some ways easier because you're writing about reality and you can take direct experiences with reality and sort of catalyze them into literary form. You don't have the shield of saying, well, you just got to go with it. This is a made-up world. This is fantastical, etc. But regardless of category, young adult, regardless of genre, everything we experience as human beings writing stories is of use. I've often said in this podcast, it's all grist for the mill. That's an old saying that I love. Just take in the grains, and they're all useful to be, well, not all of them, I guess. The good ones are useful to be ground up. Oh, she's got something in her tail. Get rid of it, Junebug. There it goes. They're all useful to be ground up and made into flour, right? So that's what's on my mind today. All the experiences, the good, the bad, the ugly, the joyous, the depressing, the frightening, the revelatory, all of them can go into our work, and hopefully do. And I feel, swapping to the reader perspective for a moment, as a reader, I can tell when there's resonance there. I can tell when it's a human using their human experiences to tell this story, even if it's fiction, even if it's non-autobiographical poetry. I can tell because I can feel it. It's like having a deep conversation with someone and learning about that person and allowing them to learn about you. It's an exchange when we read and when we write for readers. So, as I ramble with Junebug, who's just spotted a squirrel, as I ramble through the woods here, trying to keep control of her leash, I am also rambling a little bit in this video, but that's okay. It's just one of those types of thoughts, and I thought I'd go with it. And I hope it's been of some use. I'd love to hear your thoughts on this when you write. If you use your own experiences consciously, and to what extent. I'd be very curious about that. All right. We're going to just ramble on back to the car here in a little bit. Oh, there's another patch of snow. And we'll see you guys soon.